Welcome to LIFICAST, the official companion podcast of the Leeds International Festival of Ideas. My name is Larry Budd, I'm one of the team here at the festival itself and at Welcome to Leeds. This year, LIFI covers topics as broad as the evolution of creativity, reality TV and neurodiversity. But the festival overall concerns itself with one thing: how ideas might affect the future of humanity, which, depending on who you speak to, is tremendously positive or all about to come to a crashing end. This year marks 40 years since 1984, and it's 75 years since George Orwell published 1984, so that's why LIFICAST is exploring the idea of our dystopian future. In this episode, we'll explore technological advancements, in particular AI, and environmental degradation. We'll look at the ethical dilemmas and unintended consequences of unchecked scientific progress and the impact of environmental collapse on societies. Here to talk about that is Munecat, a musician, producer, writer, and popular YouTuber who is powered by beer and a hatred of late-stage capitalism. I got that from your website, so it's definitely true. And Adrian Tchaikovsky, a Leeds-based fantasy and science fiction author, winner of the Arthur C. Clarke Award amongst many other awards, and whose brilliant Children of Time trilogy dealt with themes including bioenhancement and, more broadly, the unexpected consequences of human behaviour. I hope that's a fair assessment of the of a work that there is a lot to talk about in there. So that was a quick summary. So Munecat, let's start with you. If you could describe what it is you do at this point, lots of people will have seen your YouTube videos, but describe what you do and what it is you're thinking about mostly.
So I make long YouTube video essays about any topic that I am interested in. So my most recent one was about evolutionary psychology, and it looked into academia a lot and how people can use academia and, scientific studies to come out with sort of results that will benefit people's political ideology more than anything else, rather than trying to sort of find the truth. People will try to back up, ideas about how they think that society should work. Other than that, I've looked into sort of conspiracy theories like sovereign citizens, and I've looked into climate change, and I've looked into scams as well, like pyramid schemes and things like that. I'm always interested in like the psychology behind why people believe certain things and why people are so hard to like shift their ideas on things, and why it can be so hard to change people's minds sometimes. That really interests me.
Yeah, a huge question of our age, of course. How do you change someone's mind? How do you even talk to some people? It's a big question we talked about on episode 1 of LIFICAST. And Adrian, you obviously, I in the introduction described your Children of Time series, which was wildly successful. But what else are you working on? What are you thinking about most of the time?
I'm always thinking about the next book, and weirdly enough, the next book is actually the next Children of Time book. So that it's I don't so much do trilogies as just keep writing books until nobody wants any more.
So when there are 3, it's a trilogy, and then.
But I write a lot. I have 5 separate books out this year, which is insane.
Yes.
So what I do is ideas, and I guess where that interacts with what we're talking about today is the idea space of the near future is basically like a funnel at the moment, in that if you wanted to write a book set in 20 years' time where everything was lovely, you'd have a really difficult job justifying how that could possibly be the case. You'd have to do a lot of work on it. And so anytime I'm writing anything that isn't far future, you end up having to look at where things are going now and where that's going to lead. And talking about how you change people's minds, you can do a lot worse than science fiction. Because science fiction is allegedly somewhere where we predict the future, and that's not really what we do. What we do is comment on the present. And if you just go up to someone who holds, say, a radically different opinion to you and tell them, well, look, this is a problem, we've got to do something about it, they will push back. If you give 2 people a piece of string, they will pull in opposite directions. If you count it as science fiction, if you count it as a story, you can kind of get past people's mental defenses and barriers and get ideas to them almost smuggle them past the borders in a way that doesn't raise all of those flags and doesn't immediately trigger those defenses. So sometimes expressing real ideas in that kind of fictional format is the best way of getting it to people.
Yeah, so interesting. And we'll come on to this later, but you immediately made me think of one of the great things about Three-Body Problem, which is one of the most popular sci-fis of the modern age and was made into a huge Netflix drama, which will continue, I'm sure, was, yes, it was about an alien invasion on the surface, but really it was about human politics and how we respond to problems that are a long way away and clearly allegorical for climate change. But Munecat, let's come back to you. I want to talk about Pandora's boxes and things that we're involved in at the moment, technologically speaking, maybe perhaps particularly AI. What boxes do you think we're opening at the moment that we don't quite know where they might lead?
Well, I think we're trying to market AI at the minute as using it for things that we don't need to use it for, such as we're trying to we're building models that can that are trying to replace what humans are doing artistically. We're trying to get AI to make art, which is just silly. I know that's not all AI models are trying to do at the minute, but that's what it's being pushed at as mainly is generating silly images of Elon Musk and Donald Trump getting off with each other or something like that. Whereas
I made that, sorry.
Whereas I think it could actually be useful, but what people are seeing right now is just the really silly stuff online. Whereas it could actually be useful for, I think medically, it could be really useful for diagnosing diseases really early on. I think it could be useful for specific things, but I think what they're trying to do right now is trying to use it for really pointless things. And that's how it's being marketed. And therefore, I think AI overall is getting a really bad rap. And I don't think consumers, when they see AI, I don't think they're getting good feelings out of it at the minute. They see AI and they think, oh, it doesn't look very useful to the consumer at the minute. And because it looks like all they're trying to do is just steal artists' work and just replace them. Whereas I think it could actually be useful for other things say maybe finding solutions for the climate crisis or medically, I think it could be really useful. But yeah.
And there are people that fear it, of course. I mean, in the immediate future, I write comedy and people say it will never write comedy. I'm sorry, I disagree. I think it will. I think they'll find a way to get it to tell jokes and it will figure it out. And there is, of course, the longer term fear, which is, I think, is described as the paperclip theory. Perhaps, Adrian, you could explain the paperclip thought experiment around AI and why people find that so frightening.
The best representation of the paperclip theory is actually that the animation from Fantasia, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, with the brooms, where you get the brooms and you get lots of brooms and they are doing the thing you want them to do, but you've not told them when to stop doing it. So the idea of the paperclip theory is you make a machine that's really, really good at making paperclips and you give it free rein to act. How can you make the most paperclips ever? And you don't explain to the machine that actually we don't need a world where there is literally nothing but paperclips. And so it will turn everything into paperclips and it will make these ingenious sort of AI-generated ways of turning people and all of our works and everything in the natural world into paperclips. And at the end, it will kind of go, hey, I've done the paperclip thing. Oh. I think God, for a sci-fi writer, the real bugbear with AI, as we are currently seeing it, is it's not AI. It's not remotely, I mean, it's very artificial, but it's not remotely intelligent. And most especially generative AI, the whole chat of ChatGPT or the image generation stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think it's going to write comedy. I do think it'll steal your jokes.
I agree, actually. Yeah, I don't think it will ever be able to write comedy, say, like, as you would as a job. I don't think it
Well, my jokes are terrible, so I think...
It's basically just an enormous, very, very complicated and energetically incredibly wasteful way of predicting what your next word would be. And anyone using that for any kind of creative endeavor is only ever going to produce stuff that's just going back towards the middle of the most, literally the most predictable thing anyone could write or draw or whatever based on that prompt. And also, no one is ever going to get any better by using that. I mean, people saying that there is a whole art to giving a prompt to an AI is a bit like saying you're a Formula One driver because you know where the taxi rank is. It's, but we've got this whole mad thing where, because there's this colossal amount of investment that people have basically been conned into throwing into this industry, everyone wants to put it into everything. And the idea is, well, do we need it to do this? No. Is this more efficient or cheaper or going to produce a better result than a person doing it? Also, no. I mean, this is, there are plenty of memes like this going around at the moment. Is it energy? Is it environmentally better than having a person doing it? Absolutely no. There is no use case for any of this generative AI that's being shunted into stuff. It's purely a commercial endeavor because people have been talked into throwing a huge amount of investment into it.
Yeah, Munecat, what you were saying was interesting about what it could be, what the power could be used for. There was an article, I think it was in the New Scientist during the pandemic, and it was about how long it would take to sequence the genome of the COVID virus using our current methods, and it was something like 250 million years it would take. And then there was a discussion on, let's take AI, let's combine that with quantum computing, and they reckon it could do it in about 24 hours. So have a perfect vaccine for COVID within a day of the virus appearing, which is unbelievable power. And you think, well, if that's something we could be working on. So why are we generating weird creatures behind pictures of us on Photoshop? Is it just greed? Is it so we pay more for Photoshop or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's because it showcases AI in a very sort of marketable way, like, ooh, isn't this clever? Like, you can put that on a billboard really easily, like, look what I can do in Photoshop now. Whereas, like, I think, for the vaccine stuff, I think that's where it actually comes in useful. But it's, for the general consumer, it's like they don't really care about that, Right. So I think that's why
the COVID genome is a less sexy billboard, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
But also the stuff that's being pushed hardest at the moment is generative AI. And you really don't want generative AI making your COVID vaccine, because generative AI has no concept of truth or reality or whether it is right or not. It's the stuff that is producing the mushroom foraging guides with a completely mad idea about what mushrooms are safe to eat.
Oh yeah,
and things like that. It's the systems that, if it knows that X person is Y person's son, does not know that Y person is X person's parent, because it doesn't have any concept of truth. It's purely a word assembler. So if you let something like that loose on your COVID vaccine, it'll give you a vaccine, won't be the right one, and it won't have any concept of why it's not the right one. It'll just keep giving you the wrong things randomly and telling you with absolute confidence that they will cure COVID or prevent you getting COVID. And that is what the industry focuses on. There are absolutely sort of analytical AI tools which can do these things, and which can potentially, like you say, find novel solutions to real world problems that we wouldn't have come across. But you don't want to give that to a generative system, because it will give you solutions that make absolutely zero sense but sound terribly convincing, because they're modeled on, well, what does a solution sound like? It's vibes, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, it needs to be used as a tool, not as we can't completely put our trust in it, but we can use it as a tool. I think, like, the biggest difference between humans and a computer is that a computer doesn't care about being right. It doesn't care at the end of the day whether it's right or wrong. Humans really care, because we get that social validation out of, like, finding the answer to something, whereas AI, it just doesn't care whether it has any friends or not. It doesn't care about its career, whether it's going to get sacked or anything. It's just, regurgitating information. And I think that's the main difference. Yeah.
The traditional science fiction AI is basically Commander Data from Star Trek. Commander Data from Star Trek does not do vibes. He does accuracy and truth and general social awkwardness, but very, very concerned about being precise and right. What we've got now under this kind of mask of AI is something that is 100% vibes and 0% concerned with any kind of accuracy, which is terrifying.
I was going to bring up that you're saying it doesn't care about whether it's right or not. I feel like there's a lot of humans that don't care whether there's truth or not in any given situation at the moment. A quick last one on AI before we move on. Whether it's Neuralink or something else, you're offered an AI implant in the not too distant future. Are you taking it?
Well, what does it do?
It gives so you've got the whole of the internet, obviously, but also it will give you some bits of advice.
Bits of advice.
I mean, this is in sci-fi books all the time, isn't it? With the sort of implants that you have in the far future.
I mean, I know that they're trying to develop sort of like if you lose a limb, they're trying to develop like you can have like a bionic arm or whatever, and the chip in your head will be able to like make it move. I think that could be good. Anything beyond that, I don't see how it would be helpful, personally.
I mean, yeah, the kind of the virtual sort of robot butler sort of thing, which I mean, I know Peter Hamilton writes about this sort of thing a lot. If you could get it so that it was actual AI, strong AI, as in a genuine intelligence, that would probably be useful. But the vexing thing is, I kind of feel like what we are seeing now, and the bubble which is inevitably going to burst in the same way that every other one of these techno bubbles has burst, it's going to set back that kind of thing by 10, 20 years. So we're probably not going to see genuine advances that we would have seen if we hadn't had all of this nonsense getting in the way.
Let's talk about ethics and the ethics of technological advancement. Is enough work being done, or do you see enough work being done to sort of plumb this in? Or in this race for the future that so many commercial outfits and governmental organisations are involved with, is there enough discussion about what is ethical to do here?
Not really, no. I mean, the discussion is there, but I don't think that the big companies care. They're pretending that they care. But like the big guys who were shouting out about like how we should regulate AI, they're also the guys who are in charge of the AI companies. So, they're obviously benefiting out of whatever regulation puts in place, and they're going to recommend that governments put in regulations that benefit their companies, and that's the wrong way to do it. We need actual independent experts on AI to think about how we can regulate it without having an actual, benefit out of it themselves. So yeah, I think there is a lot of discussion about the ethics of it. I mean, I think there's a lot of privacy concerns as well, because like the very nature to get AI models to work properly is you have to scrape as much data as possible. That's the only way you can get it to work. And that comes with the implications of trying to scrape it from people on the internet. Like, companies like Meta, they're using their customers' data to build AI models, and they're not being very open about it with their own customers. And they are using, websites like Facebook and Instagram to build AI models, but they're not. It'll be in like small print in the terms and conditions that they're allowed to do this, and they will allow you to opt out, but they'll hide that option behind like menus and links and stuff before you can find out how to opt out. So they're being really cheeky about it, about scraping data, and it's not only Meta doing it, it's it's all the big ones. And yeah, I don't think people really realize how much of their data is already being used to train AI, and that's a massive problem.
And quite recently, Grok, which is Elon's AI thing, I suppose, isn't it? It's his version of ChatGPT. That was scraping people's tweets or X's or whatever we call them. And there was a bit of a push on there for this is how you can opt out from this, because that had defaulted to whatever you write is now helping to teach his AI. More broadly, Adrian, about technological advancements. I mean, anybody who's read any history about the development of the atomic bomb, for example, there was discussion then as should this even be something that scientists are looking at? So the ethics go back a long way, don't they? Is that something that you see going on, a discussion about future technology? Because at the same time, we want technology that might power spaceships that take us all to Mars to live there. We might need this technology, but there is an ethical dilemma, isn't there, whenever you're pushing the boundaries of science and technology?
There is, and I mean, Mars is an interesting example. We are not going to have people, any sort of manned presence on Mars in our lifetime. And that is absolutely not what the people who are trying to sell you Mars in our lifetime will tell you. And this is, arguably we could be working towards that technology now to deploy in maybe 50 years' time, or 100 years' time, or whatever. But that is not how our sort of commercial cycle works. It's very, very short term. And so part of the big ethical problem is the idea that people need to sell you a thing now. And to do that, they will tell you a lot of very dubious things about what that thing is and what we can do tomorrow, next year. And it's not only, that is not only ethically problematic in and of itself, it also essentially tramples all over any kind of genuine discussion of ethics, because there's no point discussing, well, all right, can we do this in a generation's time if someone is running around trumpeting, let's go to Mars now, or something like that.
So it's ethics, and there's money, and there's how we spend money. And we're recording this in the week that there was the first commercial space walk, a billionaire and somebody else who went up and had the first commercial space walk. It's a huge amount of money to spend. And do you think then that this is about getting the public to buy in? It almost feels like the space race all over again. The public has to buy in order for there to be the huge technological advancements that we get. Or am I talking, is it just totally unethical to spend the money on this stuff when we have the sorts of problems that we have on planet Earth at the moment?
Well, I think that's the very reason that they're spending the money on trying to get to Mars and stuff, because they know that the environmental collapse is going to happen on Earth, and they know that there's not going to be no real effort made to stop it unless we have radical change and magically we get loads of agreement between all of the biggest economies on Earth. I think that we're probably going to rapidly go towards environmental collapse, and I think all of the richest people know that, and that's why they're talking about Mars. But I think they've realized that Mars was a bit of a pipe dream, and it's probably not going to happen as soon as they need it to. So I think now what they're talking about is living in these sort of AI-powered lines in Saudi Arabia instead. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, the Line City.
The Line City.
Yeah.
I think that's the new Mars. I think
the name of a new book for you, The New Mars.
Yeah. Because they're saying everything in these crazy new cities that are supposed to be being built in Saudi Arabia, they're all going to be powered by AI, and they're going to have AI healthcare there, and these robot janitors and drones and stuff, and super high speed trains and stuff. And I think that that's what they're going to resort to. Whether that even is going to happen is a question in itself, because they're falling behind every goal that they've had for building that as well. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I think they're just pouring their money into everything to try and avoid.
Because we have a society where everything is basically measured in monetary value, it is very hard for people to accept that actually there will come a point where things are bad enough that just having a huge amount of money does not provide you with the ablative armor to survive it. So people assume, well, look, I can spend all of these billions. I will have my sort of super tech toy bunker. I will have my Line City. I will have this arcology of the future, and we can just shut the world out. and just live in this little hermetically sealed bubble of incredible high technology and everything being done for you by robots and all of that sort of thing. I mean, as a science fiction writer, you look at that and you rub your hands, because that is prime dystopian territory, for two reasons. The first of which is, you know that of the people in that community, a very small percentage, let us say the 1%, will be living the high life, and everyone else will have this dreadful sort of degrading cyberpunk Snowpiercer style existence at the back of the train. But the other thing is, things break down, and entropy will always get you. And unless you have a much, much bigger self-renewing system, then when those things break down, eventually the thing that repairs the thing that repairs the thing isn't working. And so you will just get this cascade of failures, and you will end up, you'll make your enormous high-tech archaeology, and it will basically be like the pyramids. It will be this enormous tomb, and the people outside, when they crawl back up from the Stone Age, will tell stories about the dead kings that live in there. And like I say, from the rather short-termism of my profession, this is brilliant. There's so much material in that for all sorts of fun stories about exploring the kind of the tombs of the ancients and defective machines and all that kind of thing. But it's not exactly jolly for anyone who's putting their faith in it.
No, I was going to say, what a fascinating but sort of grim look at the future of humanity.
But the thing is, we've got to this point where the people with the most resources also seem to be the most susceptible to this self-delusion of, well, basically, I'm very rich, therefore I'm basically invulnerable. I will always be able to throw money at a problem, and that problem will be soluble. And that's, it's basically like some king in the 17th century giving millions of ducats to an alchemist and saying, make me the secret of eternal life.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a theme of dystopian fiction for years. So oddly, this morning, Demolition Man sprang into my mind. Do you remember have you seen Demolition Man?
I don't think so.
Have you watched it? You remember?
I'm sure I must have seen it many, many decades ago.
Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes. In the future, I think I can't remember which way around it is, but one of them is a criminal who's brought back from has been frozen from the past and is brought back to help these future problems. But anyway, that sprang to mind. Children of Men sprang to mind as well.
Children of Men is brilliant.
Yeah, it's a sensational film. Was it based on a book?
It is based on a book. I think the film and the book are quite different. But.
Right. Okay. There's an amazing one-shot scene throughout that. That's worth watching just for the one-shot scene, but. The theme running through those two films, I'm not just naming some of my favourite dystopian films here, the poor live in sort of dirty, smelly, smoky areas. Nothing's tidied up. They're all sort of crammed in. The only grass you ever see is in the rich areas, is where the rich people live. There's trees and sort of clean air. So this complaint that's been going on forever about the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, which is very obviously true in the world, it's not just about money, is it? It's about resources. It's about the rich get healthier, the poor get unhealthier, life expectancy drops. We're seeing it now, aren't we?
It's about opportunity. Because that's what money buys you. Money buys you time. Money buys you education. Money buys you access to quality of life. And we have a greater inequality now than we did immediately before the French Revolution, which is another meme that's going around. And I do vaguely feel like I should be investing in the guillotine stocks.
Again, another cheery thought.
I find that a very cheery thought.
Do you think we're sort of already there? I mean, this is something you've thought about on your YouTube channel, certainly stuff that I've watched about sort of wealth disparity and which direction that's going. It doesn't seem like anything anybody ever does or says, whether I'm not saying it's just Jeremy Corbyn or Bernie Sanders, but nothing anybody says seems to ever bring that back together.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way that the economic system that we live under works. It's literally how it's built, and over time it's just got worse and worse and worse. And I think rich people, I think the 1%, they're very good at sort of making people think that that quality of life is getting better just because, we have access to, better iPhones and things like that. And, not having us realize that literally everything we own is, actually, it's on loan from banks and things, and we're actually perpetually in debt. And I don't think people realize that. So yeah, I think, I don't know how to fix it without changing the entire economic system, really. But that comes from awareness, really. And it's just so complicated. And I think it's complicated by design. So people don't understand how it works, and therefore they don't know how to change it. So, yeah.
I mean, a dramatic change, let's call it a revolution, then if I'm going to go there, but they're painful and people die, people get hurt in those sort of dramatic shifts in societies and civilizations, which people are, naturally fearful of. But where do you see the resistance coming from then? Because if you look at those responsible for damaging the environment, and the way I often think about it, so I'm not only talking about Just Stop Oil, which is obviously high profile resistance at the moment. If some people won't like me using the word resistance there, but if this dystopian future comes about, environmental collapse that you talked about, it's not because you or I have not recycled the old milk bottle, is it? It's governments, it's huge organizations. Surely it's the people that run the world who will be very obviously to blame for that. So where does the resistance come from, and how does it manifest in the future? Is it a positive thing? Is it something is it war?
I mean, I genuinely think that there is, although we've got that funnel going on as far as like the future idea space goes, I think there is room for an incremental change. We're not quite past the brink. One of the things that tends to happen because we are so obsessed with the bad news is good stuff does happen quite quietly. So just in this country, the amount of our generated power that is coming from renewable sources is enormous. I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but I think we're in the 40s, getting on towards 50. That's immensely up on what it was even just a few years ago, and it's going to continue to go up. And potentially I know there's an enormous European effort on things like nuclear fusion, which, if we can crack it, will be a colossal source of power if we can make that a sustainable reaction. There is certainly a chance that what we're seeing, especially with things like the fossil fuel industry pushing back so hard, is the last thrashings of an old order. And I would very much like to believe that. We're getting to the point where actually technologically we have the capability to build the new world, which we didn't necessarily have 10 years ago. And at that point, in a way, there isn't any point having the societal change if you can't also back it with the technology. So at that point, we may be ready for an incremental transition away from all of these harmful setups. The problem with incremental situations is it doesn't tend to change the social order, so you'll still get the same people at the top. It's just at some point there will be a mass exodus of the rich and wealthy out of fossil fuel stocks and into renewables. And when that happens, you'll know, right, it's on. And one feels slightly grudging that, all right, if we can save the world, but we have to keep the same people on the top, that doesn't feel terribly just, but at least the world will be saved, so we can take some consolation in that.
I mean, this is quite an optimistic viewpoint, I think.
I know, I'm so sorry.
Do you have the same sort of optimism that there's room for this incremental change?
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed, I think many renewable options are actually cheaper than oil now, aren't they? And but oil is still like one of the main sources of energy because I think governments are just too scared about making drastic changes because it creates that unrest, like you said, and that makes them look bad. And so that's why, even though I don't think they're even profitable because they have to subsidize oil companies, but they're literally doing that because they don't want to create so much chaos, I suppose. But it's kind of what needs to happen. And that's kind of like a problem with, the democratic system, I guess, is we have a new government come in every, 5 years, and then like all of the initiatives change as soon as you've got a new government in, and any projects that the Tories might have started, if they did start anything. I mean, that would have been
No comment.
But anything that they might have done, I don't know what they did, if they did anything, but anything they might have done, that would have been completely defunded by when Labour came in. But yeah, I think Labour did stop. I think they've said they're going to stop granting any new oil licenses when they came in. But yeah, I mean, I think things are happening, but yeah, too slowly, and we need to ensure that we're not going past that 1.5 degree increase in temperature, and more needs to happen than that for that to happen. So yeah, I mean, like just stop oil. Say we literally just need to stop oil, and that will give us a really good chance of not passing that. I
mean, I suspect we are going to see in the very near future a considerable uptick in just sort of natural calamity. I mean, we've already seen the number of very serious storms is massively up, which is exactly what you'd expect when you've got a situation where you're adding more and more energy to the system. Because we're getting, with global warming, we're putting out energy is coming in. It's got to go do something. It's got to go somewhere. It's not just going to sit peacefully and not cause that kind of climatic chaos. We're going to see more of that. There will come, I suspect, a tipping point where effectively, unfortunately, something significant happens to people who have enough sway in the world.
Yeah.
Someone's beachfront property can't be protected, that kind of thing. And that will tilt that opinion. One thing I will say, though, there are two narratives that really, really assist the fossil fuels industry. One of which is, there isn't a problem, we don't need to do anything. And the other one of which is, we could have done something, but it's too late now. So we need to hold on to the idea that actually, yes, we can do something, and that we do still have hope. Because the moment you flip from that, nothing needs to be done to nothing can be done, they can just keep doing their stuff and pouring in the money. But like I say, it's even the fact that we're having this discussion, it shows this is more and more in the foreground of people's minds. The majority of people, by most polling, are genuinely concerned. I do feel that in the background of all of this, all of the downbeat stuff, we're genuinely making inroads both in public opinion and in technological advancement. And there will be a moment where suddenly saving the planet does become, actually, we genuinely need to do this. And it will be a bit late, and we will have lost a great deal, and an awful lot of species will become extinct, and an awful lot of environments will become uninhabitable. I've written books about desertification, and I've written books about what happens when you have too much water, and that also kills you in a variety of hilarious ways. And all of these things are going to come to pass in various parts of the world, and unfortunately the parts of the world where people are least able to do anything about it and least responsible for what is being done. But I think there will come that threshold moment where actually the might of just everyone saying a thing will shift us onto the right track.
Yeah. Well, we're coming nearly towards the end of our time. I have a very quick final question for you, Adrian, because I know we touched on it, and I'm interested in this now. A lot of the sci-fi that I read has our future in the stars. I think it might even be a quote from somebody, our future is in the stars. Maybe it's Elon. Let's give him some positive press. He needs it. So is our future, go on then, is our future in the 500 years in the future, we're going to skip forward, are humans living anywhere else other than planet Earth? I don't mean on a spaceship briefly. I don't mean sort of orbiting like the ISS. I mean, are we living somewhere else?
If we can get to 500 years without ending up back in the Stone Age, then absolutely yes. 500 years.
That was sort of optimistic and pessimistic within one sentence.
Or rather, our whatever it is that's descended from us. Because I think in 500 years, we probably wouldn't recognize, it might be an entirely virtual existence. It will probably be a very, very heavily engineered existence. We probably wouldn't recognize our 500-year descendants. But something that is of us will be among the stars in 500 years if we don't crash.
Good.
And if you need no other incentive not to destroy the world, if you want to get into space, we need to keep the world going.
Yeah. Well, we need to be frozen so that we can see the future, to sort of arrive in the future later on after those brief 200-year naps that are so popular in sci-fi novels. Thank you so much to you both. Thank you to Munecat and to Adrian Tchaikovsky as well. It's been a fascinating discussion. I feel like we could do another couple of hours on it, but you have places to be. So thank you so much for being part of LIFICAST this year, 2024. Thank you for listening and for watching this episode of LIFICAST. You can catch up online and find everything you need to know about the Leeds International Festival of Ideas at leedsinternationalfestival.com.